Hello, I'm Donnegal Gordon, and today I want to talk to you about this technique called copywork. Have you ever wondered how your favorite authors capture your attention and just bring you forward into the story? Have you ever wondered if you can take those storycraft elements and implement them into your own work, but maybe you haven't been sure what those elements even are or how it's even doing what it's doing? If that sounds like you, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. First, let's talk about what copywork is. At its core, copywork is the process of typing out or writing by hand another author's work. This is not for you to claim as your own. This is not for you to publish. This is not you saying that you have written it. It is not yours. The reason that you're going to do this is because it helps you focus in on the certain elements and details in their writing that you enjoy and understand how they're doing what they're doing. And this method has actually been around for quite a while. Famous authors such as Jack London and Benjamin Franklin actually used these techniques to go ahead and help them with their novels. By immersing yourself in another author's work like this and doing such a close read, you can go ahead and learn things about word choice and rhythm and sentence structure and so many things. Now, you're probably wondering, how can copying someone's work help with your writing? Isn't it just doing what they're doing? How can you take someone else's work and make it your own without plagiarizing them? That's the big question. A good way to think about copywork is to use it as a blueprint. With a blueprint, you have to pay attention to every single detail. And by doing this with writing and another author's work, especially ones that you admire and enjoy, it forces you to pay attention to details that you'll miss as just someone reading for pleasure. Copywork can be especially helpful for things like pacing and tension, voice, and you can even learn about dialogue and description. Copywork will also help you pay attention to things like punctuation and grammar that you might not have noticed that you either use strangely or don't really use, or even see how you can use it uniquely to go ahead and emphasize a point or do something different. Oh, hi, Hazel. Sorry, that's my cat. Hi, baby. I didn't know you were still in here. You want to come out? Come on. Good girl. Hello. Copying someone else's work can help you start thinking about writing tools in a different way and analyzing how other authors use them and implement them, so you can see how you might do so. And I've noticed that you'll naturally start implementing some of these things in your own writing just from the act of copying it down. I have noticed in Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber, there's a moment when she uses passive voice intentionally. And normally as authors and writers, we're told stay away from passive voice. You always want to be active. However, in this particular instance, I think the sentence was something like, door pinched her finger. But the reason this passive voice worked is because this door actually had a personality. She's able to talk to them and hear them, and it's a magical door. So it made sense in this circumstance for it to be the subject of the sentence. Another example, in one of the books that I was reading, it's called Thousand Autumns by Meng Xu. And in just the first chapter, there's an example of how the author uses the environment and enhances the character aspects, kind of using the environment to tell you something about the characters that are coming up. And then another thing that I've noticed is being able to use metaphors and how that can go ahead and feed into character voice. So in Lizelle Sambury's book, Blood Like Magic, she uses the character's hobbies to inform the metaphors that she would use in her internal thought process. And that's only what I've noticed in about a week of practicing copywork. Now, you can use copywork strategically. If you know that there's an area of your writing that is weaker, such as dialogue or character voice, or metaphors, you can actually go ahead and find books that you think did it well and copy those to go and see how they do it and how they implement these strategies. And if you're going to go ahead and be strategic, you don't have to go and copy the entire novel. Yes, this can be good, especially if you're doing more genre type research. So you want to notice patterns in genres. So you'd read and copy a lot of different genres, or the beginnings of romance books to see what's similar, what's different. But you can just do a scene. So if you know that you want to figure out how to keep pacing really fast in the thriller, then find a thriller that you really like and copy down a scene that you think the pacing's really good. And that will help you see how that author did it. I personally on this channel am going to go and be using this to go ahead and level up 11 of my writing craft areas that I feel aren't very strong. Those areas are character voice, dialogue, scenes/scene structure, sequels, which I will definitely be making a whole video about, pacing and the tension and suspense, which I kind of lumped together, story structure, world building through character perspective, a character arc / their internal conflict, cohesive paragraphs, sentence structure, chapter beginnings, and chapter endings. Those are the areas that I want to work on most this year. And now, this method I actually stumbled upon when I was reading Sacha Black's book, The Anatomy of a Bestseller, which if you haven't read it, I highly recommend. Sacha Black goes ahead and talks about this deconstruction method and how you can analyze text. If you want to know more about her methods, I would highly recommend picking up that book. I'll link it down in the description below. But copywork is very similar, except you're going to go further than just analyzing as you read, and you'll actually write it down to go ahead and get some muscle memory. Also, the act of copying down the words, whether you're writing it by hand or typing it, can help you focus on the analysis part rather than getting sucked into being a reader. Now, we know what copywork is. We know why it can be helpful for us. So how do we choose a novel to copy from, or a poem, or essays? Because you don't just have to do fiction. If you want to level up your poetry, go copy poems and see how they've done it, what methods they use. I would recommend choosing books and authors that you absolutely love. There is a place for copying things that maybe you didn't like, just so that you can see what you didn't like, note it down, and avoid doing that in your own work. But I will say that if you are copying prose you don't like and it feels like a chore, then you're gonna lose motivation. Also, if you like this author, there has to be a reason for that. And something about it draws you in as a reader, and you want to go ahead and pinpoint what that is so you can also do that in your own books. Another thing is, if you know you want to write, say, a romance, copy your favorite romances or the scenes in a romance book that make your heart flutter, make you excited about the characters. If you're writing a sci-fi or if you're looking for world building, look at where these authors have done that really well. As I've said, there are two main methods of copywork. You can go ahead and type it out, or you can write it by hand. I personally am doing a mix, because if you write by hand, you are with the text a little bit longer. You're getting that muscle memory from your hand to your brain. And so it's a little bit different, and it really forces you to go ahead and focus in on the text and the methods that are being used. However, typing is faster and is well suited to things like bigger picture problems. If you want to pinpoint the inciting incident, if you want to see a character arc in full, typing it is going to help you get through it faster to see those certain aspects. Now, for me, I've realized that I can read as fast as I type. So if it's not something that I can really focus in on and really focus on analyzing, then sometimes I catch myself being drawn in as a reader, and that can make life a little bit more difficult. I am currently typing out Stormfront by Jim Butcher and Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, and that has really been helpful. It helps me go ahead and notice what questions I have as a reader. So Fourth Wing, I haven't read it yet, and I decided to try seeing if typing it out and analyzing this way when I haven't read the book is different from when I have read the book, which I have read Stormfront many times. And I've noticed that I can keep track of questions I have as I'm reading, although it is more difficult to not get sucked in when it is something you haven't read before. If I want to really focus in on smaller details, so like sentence structure, paragraphs, those kinds of things, then I think handwriting by far is better, because like I said, I can type as fast as I read. If I am writing it by hand, I have to keep going back to make sure I have the correct words there, the correct punctuation, and it forces me to go ahead and notice these elements. Copywork should not be mindless. If you're just being mindless about it, you're not going to go and get anything out of this exercise. Even if you aren't focusing on a specific element, you should be looking at what is happening on the page as you're writing it, so you can go ahead and notice things that the author did. One tip is to pretend that you're writing it, when you're writing it out by hand, pretend that it's your story, and that can help you really think about the order and why a punctuation might be there. Things that you can look for are word choice. So like, what words really make the sentence pop out to you? What are the strong words in this sentence? Sentence structure. Are the sentences long, varied, short? I had noticed in Once Upon a Broken Heart that she uses longer sentences in her paragraphs, which I thought was really interesting. And I think this adds to the whimsical feel of her book, because it's set in like a fairy tale. And so that helps with that, which I think might be intentional. You can look at pacing. So how does the rhythm of the text feel? And then emotional impact. How does the scene make you feel? And why does it make you feel that way? Because ultimately, as writers, we want to make our readers feel a certain way. We want to manipulate their emotion to have them invested in our story. Hazel, don't jump. Hazel, come here, baby. Over here. Please, please, please. Give me a heart attack. Anyhow, I also recommend that while you are doing your copywork, especially if you're doing it by hand, take notes. I have some gel pens that I'm going to use to underline certain things that I've noticed, write little margins. You can do this while you're typing as well. I personally am using highlights. I'll have a separate page open where I can write notes about why I noticed it, what it's doing, what effect it's having. Hazel, no thank you. I'll let you out in just a second. In Sasha Black's book, The Anatomy of a Bestseller, she actually uses sticky notes while she's reading. And this can be super helpful because she'll color code them, and she has different categories for like, this was character, this was dialogue, this was description done well. And then she can look back after she's finished the book and she can see what that author did really well. Like if it's mostly one color and that was assigned to dialogue, then that author is really great at dialogue in her opinion. And so if you want to improve your dialogue, you can look at that author's work and look at more things that they've done to go ahead and continue studying that on your own. Things that I will note are things like page number, why I took note of it, and I will even sometimes write down the line that I was paying attention to so that I can look back at it later without having to reread the whole book. Now, I've mentioned it a couple of times, but some of you might be wondering, isn't this plagiarism? Well, no, it's not plagiarism. As long as you are using this for your own personal study and you're not trying to publish it or make money off of it, and it's just for your personal use, it's not plagiarism. As long as you aren't claiming it as your own, it is not plagiarism. One way that you can think of it is like scales on a piano. When a pianist is practicing, every pianist plays scales when they're learning and when they're practicing. And that's studying, that's practicing, that's not claiming it as their own, or it's not stealing. Now, if you do want to share your work that you have come from copywork, so for example, if you notice that this author did something really cool in their sentence structure, you can go ahead and share that snippet that like inspired what you did. Make sure you credit that author and make sure that your writing isn't just a carbon copy of what they did. If you want to learn more about this, I highly, highly, highly recommend Sasha Black's book, The Anatomy of a Bestseller. I've only read through it once, but I learned so much. Highly recommend. Again, that will be linked down in the description box below. Now, another thing that might come up is how long should you do your copywork for and how much? For me, I would recommend incorporating it straight into your writing routine. So maybe you take 5 or 10 minutes before you start writing your own project and you do your copywork. This can, 1, get your brain into the mindset of it's time to write. It'll have you looking at different elements of writing so you can hopefully implement them as you're writing. Not necessarily consciously, but most of this is going to just naturally come out as you do this more often. It can wake up the hemisphere of your brain that operates in the land of writing. And that way, when you sit down to work on your own project, you're already in it. You're already thinking about the different methods you can use, the different strategies. You're already geared for storytelling. As for the amount of time you should spend, yes, I said 5 to 10 minutes before you're writing as a warm-up, just because that's generally a good space of time for your brain to calm down, settle into what it's doing, and focus. However, it's less about the amount of time you spend doing this exercise and more about what you take from it. So if you only do copywork for 5 minutes a day, and you learn something from it, and you notice something about it, then that's time well spent, in my opinion. Now, before we close out today, I have a little exercise that you can go ahead and try to do if you're feeling up for it. Pick a favorite passage from one of your favorite books. Spend 15 minutes copying it by hand or typing it. Take notes while you're copying it. Notice different elements about the sentence structure, about the punctuation, about the story itself. Now, I will actually be doing a similar exercise throughout the year to go ahead and gauge how I am doing with leveling up my storycraft. So I'm going to take an outline for a scene. I'm going to write it out. And then each month that I start working on a different element of my craft, I'm going to rewrite that scene from the outline and see if these different elements are starting to be implemented into the scene. And then I'll take the very first one and the very last version of the scene to compare them and see just how much I've improved. Go ahead and give this technique a try and let me know how it goes in the comments. I'd love to hear what books you want to go ahead and copy, who your favorite authors are. For example, if I see a book that's by Stephanie Garber, I'm going to read it. I don't need to know what it's about. I don't need to read the back. I just know that I absolutely love her writing style and her characters, and so I'm going to read it. I think this is one of the most underrated techniques for writing, and I honestly had no idea what it was when I first heard the word, and my first thought was, wow, that's just plagiarism, right? But then I started to do it and I noticed that I'm actually picking things up and noticing all this stuff. I hope you join me on this journey and give this technique a shot. Let me know how it goes down in the comments. And please like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more videos on this channel. Thanks for watching this video, and I am so happy if it helped you. Please let me know in the comments below, and I will see you next time.